Welcome to Salute and Biohacking podcast. My name is Vanessa Bertinotti and my mission is to build an Italian-speaking tribe that shares my same passion for health optimization and biohacking by bringing to the table experts and people who inspire me. All the information contained in this podcast is purely informative and does not replace medical or therapeutic consultancy. On this episode, I'm super excited to welcome Ryan Carter, one of the world's leading biohacker, certified health coach, personal trainer, and registered nutritionist. He's the founder of the health coaching and personalized nutrition clinic, Vitae. He is inspiring thousands of individuals worldwide with his wisdom and insight via his website, social media, podcast, and speaking event. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite.
So I'm thrilled to have you here. Thank you for joining us today. So where are you located right now?
Right now, for the last 2 months, I have been in Nicaragua, which is essentially one of the biggest biggest countries in Central America, in between Guatemala and Costa Rica.
I see. So you are moving a lot around the world to follow like clients, or it's just a location that you like to be and live there for a while? Why did you decide to go there?
Well, I mean, I'm not really moving about. So I'm trying to settle in Nicaragua, use this as a base. Mm-hmm. So basically as a home. Mm-hmm. And maybe I go traveling to the Middle East. That's primarily for clients, but only for like a 2-month period. But Nicaragua, for now and for the future, is going to be a base for me. I just feel very aligned here. Mm-hmm. It's abundant in everything that ticks the boxes for optimal health to allow me to thrive. Mm-hmm. So with that, what I mean by that is it's not very populated dense, which obviously has an influence on our biology when we're thinking about technology abuse or non-native EMFs. The country's fairly behind with technology, so things like 4G and 5G are just like way down the line. They're very like backwards within that, and nature is just very abundant here. So again, I'm by the coast. There's seafood. There's so much lush grasses for cattle to roam around. You got vegetation and plants with their own unique different seasons. Living here is fairly reasonable, much more affordable compared to living in the Western world. And again, it's just a completely different spectrum of life, especially with the locals who are a bit more humble and down to earth. They don't have the aspirations of having like Aston Martins and Ferraris and the mansion. For them, a luxury is essentially a term called pondering, just chilling on a hammock. So again, that's their viewpoint of life. It's completely different to what I've sort of been manipulated or grew up on as selling like this dream. So again, it's really astonishing to take in the full spectrum of Nicaragua. And again, it's not just Nicaragua. You probably can catch that around different places in the world, but Central America for me really sticks out just with all the volcanoes and just the environment here with the lightning and thunderstorms and the sun just being very constant throughout the whole year. It's just an easy source of energy for the body that the body can use, essentially.
Sounds great and fascinating. So in this episode, we will learn what optimal health is about. But before we dive into today's topic, can you tell us about your journey, how you got to where you are now, and what is your mission?
So my journey is, I'm not going to go too long into it because I mean, when I hear people give their journeys and it gets a bit boring. So I keep it short and sweet. So I had no concept of what health was growing up. I was from like a middle class background. So we ate fairly well. I traveled the world, saw a few things. But again, I took my health for granted, like most people do. And then suddenly my health was like deteriorating and I didn't really know what to do about it. So it was deteriorating from many angles, purely from like obviously abusing it, eating junk food, using it with circadian disruption, all these type of things that a typical 20-year-old would do. And then essentially I went traveling to Africa, to Zanzibar and Tanzania. And again, I must have picked up a bug along the lines there. And then this was also combined with a sort of distorted relationship at the time where I felt kind of isolated. They moved away. And then I just picked up wanting to do cardio. And then basically just went on this mission to lose a lot of weight, just because there was nothing going in my life, and got very like myopic with the number on a scale. And essentially ended up with like a sort of disordered eating or body dysmorphia sort of relationship where I got down to around 55 kilos.
Wow.
So that's like nearly half the weight that I weigh right now. So that's like pretty astonishing. So obviously that has metabolic consequences. Then factoring in, I was working at the time for my dad in his antique shop, and it was kind of like an old building in London and fairly moldy. This was also combined with me living in London and must have been exposed to some sort of mold, water damaged building there. Because again, London buildings are fairly atrocious. But again, that's not really the root cause of my problems per se. It's obviously a hurdle to overcome and obviously not ideal. But again, it was coming back down to like I was also not really paying attention to my health and understanding how our biology works. So again, that's also me not really going in the sunlight. That's also me wearing sunglasses. That's me not like wearing sun cream when I was traveling. So all these sort of misnomers was actually the issue of why I was getting affected with all these issues, like gut issues or mold or mycotoxin issues, brain issues of like my behavior of why I wanted to get really lean and get focused and myopic on the number on the scale. Again, it's effect of me not thinking clearly and not having good energy at my disposal to handle these, to handle these sort of consequences.
I understand. I got you.
Something upon that, I sort of like read a few things, stumbled across like Chris Kresser, Dave Asprey, Rob Wolf, Mark Sisson. And again, these are like the paleo people back in the day, before like paleo or animal based was very sexy and social media was really taking off. And then I just like started learning and then just like stumbled across, it could be a mercury issue from all the tuna, the bluefin tuna that I was eating to sort of optimize my body composition to put on some body mass. So that was obviously another thing that was thrown into the works. And then I was just like going around in circles in the sort of alternative health space of like, what is the actual issue here? What's going on? Need help. There's loads of information, loads of podcasts to listen to. And then I sort of got onto the bulletproof sort of bandwagon and met a few friends through there. And one of my friends introduced me to a nutritional therapist. And he was actually really insightful because, again, he didn't actually use dogma in his practice, meaning he didn't like really care if like low carb works or if keto diet is the best thing or a vegan diet works. He's literally just understanding your context with no dogma and just giving you the tools which are really clinical for you. So again, this opened up my eyes to the world of nutritional therapy. And obviously made me realize that I need to move out of my work because it was obviously a detriment to my health. But again, it basically throwed me a bone, essentially, of a new job, a new opportunity. And then this is me just diving into it and wanted to become a nutritionist, nutritional therapist, and to learn more about health, essentially, what it's all about. And then basically down rabbit holes of like quantum biology and I wouldn't say the true understanding of what health is, but again, to my best of my knowledge, and again with that no dogma aspect there, of just finding and learning about health and what really works, and then applying it with clients around the world.
And
so, I mean, that's my not kind of short story, but my journey.
Interesting. And what's your definition of health now that you had all this background and this journey after maybe 10 years of working in this field and on yourself? What health mean to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, most people would classify that as the absence of disease. But remember, most people would see diseases as a diagnostic sort of identity given to them by the doctor. And typically that is just too late anyway. So again, when most people get, oh, you've got cancer or you've got Parkinson's, like that's been in the works for 20 years. So again, there is no true definition of what health is in my books. It's essentially a self-subjective awareness of our reality or perception of our reality. And again, that could just be so contextual to how you view life, what you really like about life, or your desires, what your aspirations are. For someone, that could be just thinking clearly, or someone being able to move and to work out harder every single day to beat their records. Or it's a really hard definition or something to really describe. For me, it's just literally a sensation of just feeling abundance and that I could do anything and I'm unstoppable and I'm not attached to anything. So basically, I could go without food for 5 days if I really needed to. But also I could eat carbohydrates without have any regret or without any response or detrimental effect with it. So again, it's a true sense of freedom with your health and with your thinking and how you see things.
Beautiful.
Of abundance, basically.
Beautiful. You are a person who stands out for his approach to optimizing health. Personally, I don't like tribalism and dogmas that I see very often on social media in the health space. I love your way of seeing the complexity in the world around us. You don't believe in protocol or paradigms. You listen to your clients, applying your knowledge and wisdom in a personalized method. You define yourself as a decentralized health coach. What do you mean by this term, and what makes your approach to optimal health unique?
So decentralized is my ability to think clinically is all about my client in front of me.
Okay.
So the opposite of that would be centralized. And again, that is looking at regulation, this sort of methodology of, again, diagnosis tools and an algorithm around things with like insurances, pharmaceuticals. There's sort of this like playbook as such of when someone comes into your practice, again, like their HbA1c is elevated, their insulin is elevated. Oh, we just give them this, and this is what this is. It's code X, Y, and Z. And again, what's happening there is they're not really thinking for themselves. They're not actually treating the patient in front of them. They're just treating numbers and a process. And it's all tied back to essentially profit from people above in ivory castles, essentially, with their definition of what health should be. And again, that would be like based on pseudo markers or things such as like blood pressure or cholesterol markers or whatever it is. And again, that is not really health in a nutshell. And again, it's centralized thinking. It's controlled by someone. So decentralized would be about that freedom. Like I said earlier, what optimal health is. It's about the freedom for you to have as a clinician to think and apply that and empower your clients with. So they know more about their health than they started, and their awareness, which is the key thing here, is increased massively. So they're empowered. They know their tools at their disposal. And again, that's also seen in functional medicine. So like I said, conventional medicine is more so centralized, but functional medicine is I would say is just as bad. You could actually listen to some clients' experiences of dropping like $50,000 on a prestige like practitioner in a space, say like someone like Mark Hyman or Chris Kresser. They could easily run up a bill of like $100,000 doing protocols and testing. And again, they might not have fixed their problem. They just got elaborate, fancy testing with nice little colors and diagrams showing something. What does that actually mean? Has that actually changed anything within their practice? Does it actually change recommendations? Now, not really, in my view. From all my experience with all my clients, all these sort of elaborate and sometimes functional medicine practices are just a waste of time. And again, speaking as a nutritional therapist, the way I've been educated has typically done via test companies and supplement companies, which is a conflict of interest. hey, like, let's run a Dutch test on you. Oh, but let's also use this supplement here and that supplement there to reduce that marker there. Let's retest with the same test again. And again, it's sort of like it's not actually the reason why that marker is misplaced or maybe not even accurate to do anything with anyway. So again, it's sort of conflicted, functional medicine. But again, not a lot of people are aware of it, because again, it gives you this emphasis of, nutrition, eat whole foods, conventional medicine's garbage. But again, there is some truths there. And I'm not to say that it doesn't do any benefits at all. It does. But again, I'm just saying there is some context there, but it's not all like roses that functional medicine sells you. And again, it's just sort of misguided and misplaced intentions, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the way you describe this complexity around our optimal health journey. Is not about only testing. Maybe it makes sense in a certain time, but it's not only that thing. It's about self-awareness, and it's about a lot of other thing around it. So,
well, I mean, this is like, you get lost with all the data, with all the tracking, and like you can get lost with the Oura ring or with your Whoop score, with like your workout or something, without actually feeling and being human. And being human is all about the experience and like how you perceive things. And again, you really need to get attached with that. But again, being attached and aware of your body is kind of scary for some people. It's a bit like learning how to ride a bike. You get like stabilizers at the start, or maybe your parents help you and hold on to you. But then, like, obviously, when you get rid of the stabilizers, things are very shaky. This is also like when we're waking up our body, and our self-conscious self is like, it's kind of scary for some people to feel things and deal with things, instead of just like hiding away and just using numbers and data, which again, there's a time and place for it. But again, we are a human being. We're not robots. And again, that applies to everything, whether that's like exercise, whether that's like looking at your sleep, or whatever it is like, it's the experience of life and your perception of life which matters the most.
It makes total sense. So thank you. And why light and circadian rhythm matter so much, and how they affect humans every day on a mitochondrial level? Why entropy, energy, and environment are an essential aspect if we want to optimize our health?
Yeah, so I mean, this boils down to like the start of life, basically. So life needed some feedback, some control to do something with the energy at our disposal. And again, the major source of energy on the world, on planet Earth, is coming from the sun. But again, it's also has a yin-yang sort of element with it, which is darkness. So again, light is powerful and needed, but also darkness is where things essentially sort of condense and repair, so to speak. So again, there's always been a feedback, like a positive and a negative feedback loop within our biology. And again, when we think about mitochondria, the bacteria origin, and bacteria were essentially on this planet before humans, or eukaryote cells, which is what a human is essentially. So again, light was essentially the starting ingredient which created everything on this planet. And our mitochondria, our bacteria, were at the beginning of that. So essentially, they are very sensitive to all the sort of stimuli and changes and feedbacks, like we just said, whether that is essentially like a solar burst, or the intensity of light change in the summer compared to the winter, or even things such as altitudes where you are, whether you're up on a hill or whether you're at sea level. This is actually altering another component here of like one of the starting premises of life, which is oxygen. And again, without oxygen, things don't actually happen well in the human body. So again, without oxygen, we can't actually utilize any food. We can't actually break down anything. So again, this is essentially the premise of life. And again, there's different oxygen tensions throughout the whole day as well. So without these in order and in check, we sort of get a bit of chaos in the system. And this is where we have to like keep entropy at check. And when entropy increases, that's basically saying there's chaos in the system. And chaos in the system is essentially inflammation. And again, as we know, inflammation is linked to like less ability to make energy. Less ability to make energy is less investment into the system to do things such as repairing, such as growing new cells, all these kind of processes. And again, obviously that just sort of leads to aging and the decline of the human being, which can sort of be traced back to how well our mitochondria singly, but also as sort of a team in each sort of cell in different sort of tissues, they're working. And again, like we are essentially so tied to how well our mitochondria communicate with our nucleus to turn on or turn up different regulating processes, such as genes, such as enzymes, such as dealing with stressors, that when we lose this, that's when essentially all these modern diseases start to appear and start to become a problem, when we sort of lose control and can't make any energy.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Maybe also because we are made for 98% of water.
Well, I mean, I would say that the human body is, again, composed mostly of hydrogen. Okay. And hydrogen is sort of like a chameleon because, again, the sun actually uses hydrogen as its form of sort of metabolism. But also our mitochondria use it as well with the protons in terms of like that electrical potential to power the ATP synthase, the motor essentially in our mitochondria. So again, hydrogen or water has a key role here, but it also has a key role because it's basically the essence of life and a massive sort of coherent domain, which basically means a battery, okay? Because obviously water is hydrogen and oxygen, which is a positive and a negative. So again, this is essentially influencing how proteins work within our body, but also with like the DNA, the RNA, the hydrogen bonding network, all around our cells, just covered everywhere with water, doing this sort of miraculous sort of thing. And even like the angles of the different proteins and it's just so vast. And again, when we have our sort of biochemical lens on, this sort of just goes out the window. We don't actually take water into consideration as being sort of a medium of how life actually unfolds. And again, as we age, we sort of miss out on how this water works. And again, a baby can actually sort of like float on water to a certain degree because it's composed of like water and obviously fat, it's buoyant. But again, as we age, this essence of water sort of declines, and so does our health.
Yeah. And you promote an ancestral life approach, those principles that the Western prize discover. Can you explain what are those principles and how this approach makes sense in our modern world?
Yeah, so Western prize basically set off around the world to find indigenous tribes or indigenous people and discover what their secret source to good health was, why they didn't have the diseases that the Western American world had. And again, essentially what he discovered was, again, community was a big part of these people. They didn't have like, obviously, towns, skyscrapers. They were very like closely knitted communities. So again, that's something that most people don't actually discuss. Also other things such as they actually had skin in the game. They actually used like natural clothing, or they were literally like butt-ass naked and skin in the game. They weren't wearing sunglasses. They weren't having sun cream. They weren't putting SPF, using makeup or anything like that. They're actually connected to the earth and to the sun. So again, that's what actually most people forget about what Western Aid Price discovered. But again, the most thing that most people take away is that he was all around traditional diets, eating a nose to tail and shell sort of diet, not disregarding anything basically. It obviously didn't have like added sugars. It didn't have things such as like ice cream as such. It was using everything locally and seasonally. And again, this is basically like a encrypted, quantized barcode inside food, which essentially our mitochondria typically get at, and they basically decipher all this information between all these chemical bonds and make sense out of it. That's why sometimes, like, if I was here in Nicaragua, for me to eat wild salmon from Alaska, it really just doesn't make sense at all. And who's to say that is actually not as detrimental as eating some sort of cane sugar, which actually could be actually locally derived here? Who's to say that that's not just as bad, or if not worse? But again, that's just like one example. The other example could be like someone from the UK or even in Italy thinking like that coconut oil is okay, or that avocado should be eating all year round. Well, again, like, that's not to say that these foods are bad or good or anything like that. It's just to give you a bit of common sense and make you think critically. Yeah, how is that actually even possible that my supermarket round the corner that's open 24/7 is actually selling this type of food? When if I like go backwards, even like 100 years ago, it was like literally impossible to actually have this type of food in the local greengrocer or fruit and veg market. It's just absurd. It doesn't make any sense. So again, no other wild animal sort of creates life like this. No other animal creates this sort of dilemma. Only humans do, because we've got a very special brain where we can create technology to make this happen. And again, like, there is a cost to pay with this. Again, there's a cost to pay with this, with food abundance available everywhere. We think about food all the time, from technology means, from social media, with our favorite recipe person teasing us with like mouth-watering food, or telling us, look, you can make all these gluten-free vegan donuts because there's no flour in it. Go for it. It's okay. It's safe. It's paleo. But in fact, like, that's just a sort of misnomer. And again, it's a tricky road. But again, it's not to say that that might not be the first start for someone, and it might not help someone. And again, in my journey, it definitely did for me. It was like the breadcrumbs. I started discovering, oh yeah, maybe paleo is a step in the right direction. But then again, as soon as my brain started firing and working again, I could actually apply this critical thinking and think a bit deeper. And again, not be judgmental, but actually just see what's going on, basically. Being a bit more of an observer and asking questions and being curious with all these sort of things that people think is normal or better or healthy. Like being vegan, like what does that really mean? Why would you want to be vegan? What is that actually really doing to your biology? Is it actually creating a problem? And just taking all these considerations, but then as a nutritionist or nutritional therapist or clinician, it's really seeing how you can apply this and integrate this, educate your client. Because again, I don't expect anyone to go from 0 to 100 overnight. That's not how it goes. But again, integrating it, small steps. Maybe it might be about carbohydrate sources first, getting those local. Maybe that's more important. Or then it might go about fats, and then just understanding things, and then realizing things that, yeah, maybe your body doesn't actually need as much food as we really perceive. Maybe there's a seasonal variation over that. Maybe if my skin's more in a game, I actually need less food. And again, Weston A. Price, he actually was astonished, or maybe it was some other researcher, I can't remember the name, but he was like that, studying how much calories the 𝐬𝐻₃ consume, but also expenditure. And then they also compared it to some Silicon Valley person in San Francisco. And again, they were about on par with the same like calorie needs. But the issue is like, where was that mismatch? Because obviously the 𝐻𝐻₃ had a huge amount of calorie expenditure, more so than the people from San Francisco. But again, what I'm saying is what I just said was, the 𝐻𝐻₃ people have more skin in the game. They wear like cloths literally just around their junk. They're driving massive amounts of energy and energy from the environment, basically from the sun, with sort of like the concept of what we said with the water being a massive depository of energy, acting like a battery. And again, that's truly how it works. But again, you just have to get the mind over that as well. Because again, we're conditioned to think we need like 4 meals a day, or stimulate muscle protein synthesis all the time, or that we need this amount of calories. Well, again, like, I'm here to say that we need to be questioning that. Because again, like me and my clients, we sort of go opposite of what bro science says. I'm like nearly 100 kilos, basically. I'm pretty strong, I would say. And again, I don't eat nowhere near of what should be recommended to me. And again, it's astonishing.
Yeah.
And again, I don't even feel hungry majority of the day. Now, you could also get that you can also turn that around in some communities online, like the Petarians, popularized by Ray Peat, like pro-metabolic diets, and said, oh, that's bad because you got to stimulate your metabolism and eat more sugar and all these kind of things. But again, it just doesn't make sense. And again, I do run labs on myself. I do look at my markers to make sure everything is on point. Obviously, I don't go neurotic about that. And again, I'm in check with myself. Is my libido on point? Is my brain thinking clear? Am I sleeping well? Am I having dreams? How's my mood? How am I reacting to sort of responses? How am I engaging in conversations? How am I remembering names? How's my ability in learning a new language? All these sort of basic factors of life. And again, everything's on point. So again, who's really right or wrong here with sort of this approach? And then it gets you thinking about, okay, if my environment is crap, I need to sort of make up the energy shortfall of this. Or if my brain's really not working well, am I actually picking up the energy embedded in food, aka electrons? And is my hormonal system actually really working with things such as melatonin or leptin? So again, this is like the curiosity and the magic and essence of life, basically. It's just unbelievable. But again, like Weston A. Price, he came across this, but he just didn't put the connections there. And again, I didn't like find this out. I'm like listening to other people in a space and just connecting the dots myself. And again, it's just my interpretation, my hypothesis of a collection of research, whether modern, whether ancestral viewpoints, and just consolidating it into our modern world. Because again, ancestral living, ancestral food might not actually be practical for my client who lives in New York or Abu Dhabi or LA. But again, it's obviously where it all started, and it has some important factors there. But where does this actually make sense in our modern world? Because again, we can't turn back the cloths. We're not going to be living in caves. We're not like, I mean, some people could just walk around with like cloths if they wanted to. But again, most people are not going to like take their top off and go in deep as I am with like skin in the game. So again, this is where the magic of like a clinical practice comes in, and that decentralized health comes in, about what can we do? What can we do right now? What's really possible? What's practical?
Yeah, interesting. It's very complex because also when we think about the body type, it's also one thing that for me it's important. For example, I'm an ectomorph, and how I metabolize certain food, for example, and how this affect how I feel, and also eating seasonal ingredient, how does those ingredient affect my biology and my microbiome, because it's continuing adapting to those ingredients. I don't know if it makes sense, my question, but
yeah, well, I mean, like your metabolism, your biology, and your microbiome, they basically are all adaptive. There's variations all the time with it. So again, we shouldn't really be caught up in like some person like Tim Spector online saying you need to eat 30 plants a day for gut, or 30 plants a week for gut health. Like, in essence, that makes zero sense. Like, 0 cents. Again, we would have to be a very weak human and extremely fragile if that was the case. There's many factors influencing our biology, not just food. But again, food has a role. It's not to say it's not important. But again, it's the bigger picture: exercise, stress response, sleep, sunlight exposure. Cold therapy even changes your microbiome. There's all these factors there. And again, at the end of the day, humans are a higher complex animal species than bacteria. Bacteria are literally on our bodies for the ride. So essentially, they are like our slaves. They should be dictated via our metabolism, via our biology, not the other way round. And again, bacteria are on the outside of our body. Even the gut, I would say the gut from the mouth to the anus is actually the outside of our body, although it's the insides, it's still the outside. And again, like, we have control over that. So again, we could even have pathogenic bacteria that everybody loses their mind to, or even a bit of like mold exposure, like I just said, or even like parasites and worms. It doesn't mean it's actually going to be causing the biological consequences that we think or that we're taught by functional medicine. And again, we can look at wild animals who pretty do okay when they're infected with parasites. And actually, there's like a few monkey species out there with those with the highest parasites actually have the highest testosterone levels. And again, they would be the alpha male of their sort of tribe and community, and they have the highest parasitic load. So again, it makes you question these sort of narratives that, like clean living, antibiotics, or using antimicrobials, and just throwing more stuff in our guts, basically, or really caring about prebiotics to the nth degree. And again, it's not to say like plants don't have their role, they do, but again, we shouldn't lose our minds to it. And again, we should always like think like on the priority scale, why would we care about a plant for our survival? Back in the day, our brain is always derived from that sort of epigenetics of what evolutionarily happened. So again, fat was essentially a luxury. To have a bit of adipose tissue was basically like having the latest iPhone. It was a luxury. But again, obviously that's turned around now. And again, that's why we see it's so hard to actually lose weight sustainably long term, because the body doesn't really want to give it up, essentially. So again, we have to think of modern ways of changing that. And again, we only can really do that when we actually put our ancestral lenses on and sort of understand why we got fat in the first place, and sort of change that signal or the events that took place, whether it was from food or whether it was from a light response as such, and sort of hack the body that way. But again, it's not going to be coming from just an all ketogenic diet. And instead, like, that approach long term would actually probably do more damage to your biology long term. And that's why it's important to have respect for the seasons and see the changes of the minerals in the foods that you're eating. Because again, you shouldn't really lose your mind to being worried about magnesium content all the time. Again, it's got a seasonal variation to it. Again, the more carbohydrates that you consume, the more need you have for minerals to help you use that glucose, because that is a more inefficient fuel source for the body in that time of year. And glucose does something different that fat, or utilizing more fat, can't do, essentially. And again, it's not to say glucose is bad or it's inferior. It's just a different signal, and it's dependent on so much context of where you are around the world, your age, and everything like that. And again, this is where you hear poor advice from people like Glucose Goddess, who basically say you need to protect your glucose response, but you can still eat the same foods. This is essentially mediocre advice. Again, what you're doing there is you're actually not allowing people to have the awareness or critical think their choices. You're basically allowing them to do what they've been doing, but just add a little bit of a hack on and not change anything with their behavior, basically. And again, people are like that. They don't like to make changes. They're very resistant to do things. And again, if you tell someone that they can still eat their Nutella, just take a swig of apple cider vinegar before the meal, people are going to do that. But again, like, that's not the point. Obviously, Nutella, again, it's going to be a problematic food. It's like obviously processed. And again, it's in a concoction to overconsume, essentially. The salt, the sugar, and the fat. That's rarely found in nature in one like mouthful. So again, that is the sort of problem that we're in. And again, who's to say that we actually want a glucose response? A healthy glucose response with your blood sugar going up actually is healthy in my view. And again, it's kind of interesting listening to Chinese medicine people who actually have the awareness about avoiding eating fruits with other like protein sources. Fruit should be consumed by itself. Again, what's the rationale there? Maybe, again, we want that glucose response. Maybe we want a bit of fructose to actually change some signaling pathways in our metabolism as such. Maybe we want to actually clear some problematic mitochondria with a bit more oxidative stress from eating some carbohydrates. I mean, that's the essence of how our biology works, not being this sort of balanced, metabolic, flexible sort of ideology, which doesn't make sense from a seasonal viewpoint, which again is the bread and butter of our, which should be the bread and butter of our nutrition, essentially.
Yeah, I got you. And every time we eat something, we are actually inducing inflammation in our body, no matter if we are eating healthy or not. We live in a world full of stressor, as you said, and everything we do is an adaptation response of those stressors. How can we?
Well, I mean, every time we make energy, we are actually producing a bit of a free radical as a response.
Yeah.
Right?
And
even like our microbiome, they actually help us break down food, but when they're stressed, they actually release a lot of light as well. When they're breaking down food, they actually release a very low level of a biophoton in the ultraviolet range. And again, like that's a stress signal. Our enterocytes, our lymphatic system behind there, our immune cells behind there are listening to that sort of stress and light release created by the bacteria there. Again, that's why there's serotonin released in our gut, which most people are very familiar with. But again, that's coming from the metabolism of like tryptophan from the bacteria there. But again, that's how it works. Our body adapts on our stress response. But again, we are only able to adapt and do better if we can handle that stress response or that light release. Okay. And again, that's even when a cell divides called mitosis, there's actually like a light release that goes on there. And again, it's signaling things. And again, like I said at the start, water is right there, and a massive depository or capacitor for absorbing the full spectrum electromagnetic field, basically, which obviously light would fall in there.
And which are for you the main strategy that can help us reduce like the silent inflammation? You said it's not so bad, the inflammation, because it brings us energy. But in the other side, if we are always, if we inflame too much our body, it's still not so good. So which are the strategy that we can use to reduce?
Yeah, so I mean, like the most safest anti-inflammatory out there is no doubt going to be plugging into the earth, called grounding.
Okay.
There's no harm. Again, maybe there's a bit more context within the city, but essentially you need to take off your socks. No other wild animal wears socks or rubber soles shoes. This is a big issue. This is why we have sweat glands on our feet. And again, maybe you have the awareness around this. When you're working in the city all day, as an example, in an office, and you got your socks and shoes on, maybe your feet are sweaty even more. But again, when you're actually barefoot and you're grounded, you don't sweat as much. That's maybe your body giving you the sign that it needs to ground, essentially, from sweating, because sweating conducts more electricity and lets us absorb more energy from the earth, more of these free electrons which are going around. So grounding would be number one, the easiest way. Again, you can supercharge that by grounding in actual water. So the sea, a river, a lake, that's actually going to immerse your whole body in a grounding sort of capacity. And again, it's sort of replicating being in your mother's womb as a baby, surrounded by this sort of fluid. And again, it's very, very restorative to our health. So that's a big thing. Other things such as listening to sound, I think that gets a bit brushed off. But again, if we understand our ears, we're actually absorbing the EMF spectrum of sound. And again, that's free energy. It doesn't cost anything. That could just be sitting outside, listening to the leaves of the trees brushing each other. Maybe it's listening to bird songs. Maybe it's listening to water running and flowing in like a lake or a stream or a pond. Maybe it's just listening to a baby giggle, or laugh. Again, that's a source of energy and information. And again, that's very healing, and it's going to reduce inflammation. But again, we can also like bring it back also to the sun. Different parts of the sun at different times are going to be more anti-inflammatory than others, as an example. So again, that'll be the sunrise and sunset. These transitions are going to be very rich in red light, and red light is a means of enhancing our cells or mitochondria's way of efficiency of producing energy, and also influencing water and certain proteins working better, or enzymes working better. So again, there would be the 4 main anti-inflammatories that comes to my mind, basically. Just grounding outside in nature, going to a water, sort of nature's water, whether it's a lake, river, or the sea. Sound, again, like coming back to nature again. And like I said, sunrises and sunsets for that more red spectrum coming in.
Beautiful. And we know also that when we think better, you said we make better choices. You talk a lot in your social media about the benefit of DHA for our brain and health. Can you walk us through that topic as well?
Yes, I mean, it's an evolutionarily conserved fatty acid, which is a polyunsaturated fatty acid. Again, it's not just one, it's also broken down, or quote unquote oxidized, and it's broken down as to different derivatives which actually put the brakes on inflammation with like resolvins. And again, these byproducts are very important, but also like signaling molecules. But DHA has a really important role in our cell membrane and also on our outer mitochondrial membrane in how essentially bioenergetics works within the human body. And again, this is going to be influencing a whole host of proteins, enzymes coming into the picture, which all work on electricity, such as neurotransmitters. And again, this is why the brain has a rich source of DHA. And DHA is very like unique because its structure sort of has like a cloud or a bit like a lasso on top of it. And it essentially creates a bit of a cable, like a wire, a cable or wire, when sort of sunlight hits it. Again, if you can actually absorb the sunlight, and that basically runs through your eye to your brain and conducts a big charge for things to turn on and basically unfold, and for things for the magic to happen, so to speak. And again, that's going to be working on like your nervous system throughout your whole body. So again, it's key. And again, seafood is the secret sauce there, because again, you're also getting the DHA, but you're also getting the iodine, the selenium, the protective factors all around DHA. Taking fish oil by itself is a misnomer. You're not getting the iodine to protect it. That's why iodine is very important for the human brain, and why you can see issues when someone goes hard on like, or unconsciously goes hard on like fluoride or bromide as an example, because again, it's competing with how iodine works, but also with how it works within DHA as well. And again, the leader in the research here is a guy called Michael Crawford. And again, he's got a research paper out about the weird, interesting, like in quantum physics, how DHA essentially works. And again, this comes back down to sort of like the Einstein main theory, which is the photoelectric effect, which again is what I explained with like how DHA turns into sort of this cable wire and sort of conducts electricity through the human body. Okay? And again, this is speeding and improving efficiency of communication. And again, this is going to reduce entropy, i.e. reduce chaos, i.e. reduce inflammation. And again, this is why you see like consumption of DHA is linked to reduced inflammation markers like interleukin-6, improvements in like sex steroids, blah, blah, blah. And again, this is it essentially. And again, when we see maternal ingestion of a seafood diet, better outcomes for the fetus, because the fetus is downloading massive amounts of DHA for its brain and for its nervous system to work, and how energy works in the body. It's not just dependent on ATP.
Got you. And another important topic is also cholesterol. Why people shouldn't be afraid of cholesterol?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not really a big deal via dietary sources. I mean, I would actually say the biggest deal with cholesterol dietary sources is actually consuming plant sterols, sorry. So again, this is actually like plant mimics of cholesterol. This is probably like more concerning, and that would obviously be things such as like margarine and all that kind of crap, the plant oils. But again, there's no rationale to be concerned with cholesterol per se. But again, what we see is obviously it's rare at the crime. But again, it's typically all to do with the redox, i.e. reduction and oxidation balance. So again, when things are more oxidized, yeah, cholesterol is going to be there. LDL is going to get oxidized. But again, oxidized will be happening to proteins. It'll be happening to sugars. It'll be happening to DNA. It's everywhere, not just literally cholesterol. And again, there's a seasonal variation with how cholesterol works within your body as well. So again, when we're more stressed, we typically see increases in LDL cholesterol. Maybe that's actually a healthy response. In females, when they hit menopause, we see increases in LDL cholesterol as well. Why? They're not really using that to make sex steroids as much as they once were. So again, is there a cost to pay when we're trying to lower cholesterol into like really absurd levels? Yeah, there probably is, especially when we get older. So again, cholesterol is really important with how lipids work within the body, because again, it makes up the majority of the cell membrane. And again, it also works with different elements in the human body, such as sulfur, and that's going to be charged via sunlight. So again, it's really interesting, like cholesterol, and I wouldn't say I'm an expert on it, but again, it's nothing really to be feared about per se. And again, when we interpret it on like blood work, I would not listen to sort of conventional advice about it at all. Again, what we see in blood is actually not that relative to what's actually going on in the cell or in the tissue per se. We're only seeing it in the blood.
And so you are speaking about tests in the biohacking community. We often hear stop guessing, start measuring. What role do tests such as blood tests, DNA tests, microbiome tests, hormonal tests play in your approach to optimal health when you prescribe or you do test?
Yeah, so this, again, depends on the client with their budget available. So if someone with an unlimited budget, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be recommending a few more, potentially explaining to them about, yeah, we could do this test here to show this here. And again, this is going to maybe help us be a bit more specific with our recommendation. But again, it's not the be-all and end-all. Sometimes some clients come to me and they're a train wreck. They've seen like 10 different practitioners. They've gone round the circles. They've done all the tests. They've got all the data. They've taken all the supplements, and nothing's worked. So again, it's just like there's some fundamentals that we need to do first that most clinicians miss out on. Get that working and dialed in, and then maybe we can see and do a test and get a true reflection of what's actually going on in your body, whether that's blood test derived or whether that's using an organic acid test or a metabolics test. Again, that's going to be useful. Other things such as genetic tests, again, there's a time and place for that. Again, I don't put too much emphasis on it, but again, if we are a bit stuck, getting some idea of like the variants in certain SNPs, whether it be like tumor necrosis factor alpha, whether it be nitric oxide synthase enzymes, or whether it would be something to do with like your haplotype, i.e. where your mum comes from, which would obviously influence your metabolism, then again, these would be useful things. But again, it wouldn't be like the starting essence, because again, our genes are not our destiny as such. We have massive influence over it. But again, things need to be sort of optimized or 80% there to really reap the rewards when we dive into sort of SNP variant personalization.
And how important is self-awareness if we want to empower ourselves and feel better? Why everybody should become the expert of their own body and mind?
Well, otherwise they become a walking sheep, basically. They're basically part of a centralized algorithm and not thinking for themselves. And again, they're never going to get control of their health. Literally, the first step of improving your health is self-awareness. And again, that doesn't happen overnight. These connections, like they form over time. Oh, yeah, that's maybe the reason why my energy dipped when I had orange juice and a mango and, I don't know, a croissant for breakfast. Again, just putting these connections and connecting the dots is the first step for taking back control of your health. It really is. Again, like, it's more important than any testing. Again, you can track that. You can have a notepad. You can have a diary and just make a note of, like, using a percentages and just saying, like, I feel like 75% today. And then just do that every single day and just see the trends. Have a journal, reflect back. What did you do today that was different? What did you do today that allowed you to have that really restful night's sleep? Maybe it was that 15 minutes of grounding in the morning that made me feel like a rock star and made me sleep like a baby. Or maybe it was me turning off the Wi-Fi. Or maybe it was me adding a bit of lemon juice into my sort of distilled water, reverse osmosis water that I consume. So again, it's just like understanding where things are going on and then allowing you to be your own doctor.
But many people are so disconnected with their own body and mind that they often need to look at numbers to know how they feel. Which are the best strategy that can help those people reconnect with their own body and mind?
Yeah, I mean, again, a good gateway in would be like the Oura Ring. And again, I don't necessarily think you need one, but some sort of sleep tracking device, which is very easy to do. It doesn't take anything out your schedule to do. Obviously, there's an investment in buying a thing. But again, like heart rate variability would probably be like the most gold standard marker to go from, looking at a sort of energy, autonomic nervous system and immune hormonal response element, like loads of axes coming in here with how the heart rate variability works.
So,
doesn't really lie.
And how?
So again, you don't have to do an Oura Ring for that. You can also do things like on the HeartMath. You can get a HRV for training app on your phone, and you can use your camera. That's another decent tool. But again, there's some context with how you get that reading and whatnot. But again, that's just bringing you into your body, bringing you aware of your autonomic nervous system, which is just always there, firing. And again, never in one state or the other. It's always in like some sort of ratio.
So breathing could be a great strategy to hack a bit the HRV, your HRV.
Well, again, everything. It's not just breathing. Again, you breathe unconsciously for a whole day. I've forgotten the actual number, how many times you breathe. But again, just having more awareness of your breath is obviously powerful, but how does that happen when we're having this conversation? How are you breathing right now? Well, I'm expelling a lot of carbon dioxide from my body right now. But again, when I'm not speaking, I'm being very aware. But again, that's only from my education that I know about that. Again, like most people who are connected and using like computers or laptops for work and writing and reading emails, like again, they're probably mouth breathing and not actually taking in the breath. Because when we read something, our mouths sort of open up and we're sort of like reading it back in our minds and we're actually not breathing. And again, this is called like email apnea. And again, this is problematic. But again, the moment that we are away from nature and indoors, again, oxygen is actually being changed in our biology. And again, no amount of breathing would make up for that.
Yeah. And what do you think about wearable? You talk about Oura Ring. but other wearable and tracking are a good practice for people that are disconnected, or should be?
Yeah, I mean, the thing here is like the Oura-rings is a good wearable. Actually, I prefer the older model, which doesn't have a light emitting. So again, if you can get that on like eBay or Amazon, I'd probably get the older version. Again, there's probably a time and place for like tracking ketones or tracking glucose. The issue is like what happens is you get the glucose device and you get it from like a third-party company. And again, they're going to give you all the shit that goes with it, which again is going to be centralized thinking. Again, that might be like Levels, who are one of these companies. And again, they got a board of advisors, and you're listening to stuff like Peter Attia, who's very centralized in his thinking, who doesn't think outside the box. And again, it's sort of like you're going to get the same story about like coating or dressing your carbs to prevent a glucose response, and all this sort of crap that literally doesn't make any sense. Like literally, the animals here and the people, endogenous people of like Central America that eat the carbohydrates or the fruits, it's not important about dressing it in fat or having it with a protein meal. It plays no significance or relevance to how it should really be consumed. It's only our problem with like our own metabolism and health and our like ideology of how things should be balanced, which is the problem. Or thinking that we need glucose all the time. And then obviously we're going to get this sort of like elevation of glucose, or when we're stuck indoors, we're always going to get this inefficiency of utilizing glucose for it to actually be used in the mitochondria, essentially, to go towards oxidative phosphorylation. And again, it's going to be hanging around a little bit longer. So again, that's the real problem here. Because again, at the end of the day, you should be able to eat glucose seasonally by itself, not care, and get over it, and not be an issue. That's how it's designed. It's not designed to like care if you have a bit of protein with it, care if it's dressed in some fats, which some like hobby nutritionist says on Instagram. It doesn't really work like that. Like when you're out here and you see the fruit, you're going to eat the fruit. You're not going to take it somewhere, go to the supermarket, get some Parma ham, or get some olive oil and wipe some olive oil on it to mitigate a glucose response. It doesn't work like that. It's absolutely absurd. It's down to our way of living, which is sort of backwards. And again, the abuse of consuming carbohydrates, or even like abuse of even fats. Again, we shouldn't eat the amount of fat that we probably eat in our diet, which is everywhere. Again, like adding oils onto your like meals doesn't make any sense at all, in my opinion. I mean, actually, to actually dive in a little bit deeper in what I'm doing for wearables right now. Right now, as we speak, I'm actually wearing like a ice pack around my waist. That's my kind of wearable. It's actually not technology derived. It's called Full Fat Burner. And again, it's on my waist, and it's doing a bit of cold therapy on my body. Another wearable that I would be for is also a light, like the V-light, which again is like a nasal clip red light biomodulation light. And again, that's not replacing anything. But again, when you're in like an airplane or something, or indoors stuck, again, putting this light on is going to have a beneficial effect. So again, those are the type of wearables that I would be for, opposed to sort of like data tracking or being too worried about your metabolism or food response, as an example. Okay.
Yes.
So again, if you've got optimal health and you're healthy and you feel healthy, why would you really worry about it? Again, a response to glucose is not a bad thing as it's made out to be.
So you know very well the biohacking community. Based on your experience, which are the things you like about this world, and which are the things that you don't really like because they don't make sense for you?
Yeah, I mean, I really discourage like. So again, it depends. Maybe it's bringing you into this space, and these biohackers are the stepping stone for you to be more empowered, and maybe come across my work or other people who maybe are very similar to me with their thinking or their approach So again, maybe there's no harm here, but again, I'd just be careful. People like Brian Johnson, Dave Asprey, all these type of people, that they really don't know what they're doing. And again, the aftermath of these effects. And maybe with someone like Dave Asprey, maybe you can see what's going on and how he looks now. And maybe this is a consequence of like playing God for the last 5-10 years on his body and what's happened. Again, it doesn't look like it's working out too well for him on that kind of level. So again, just being careful of the information that you're being sort of listening to and sort of like manipulated in a way. Because again, everyone sort of is influenced. Everyone is sort of listening to information. There's so many like podcasts, and then within this, there's so many like sponsorships. There's so many like product drops. And again, you really need to understand like all that information out there. Like again, listening to Huberman Lab. Again, he's a great source of information, but how does it apply? Because then you listen to him, and again, you're going to listen to Athletic Greens. And again, like Huberman recommends them. Maybe I need some greens. That's an easy way. I don't want to eat vegetables. I'll just take this powder. But again, what the hell is in this powder? It's a concoction of like 50 different plants from all around the world. Again, it makes sort of zero sense to need to consume it if you're healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So again, it's just like listening to people and sort of dissecting it for yourself and not just jumping in. Oh, Ben Greenfield recommends this, let's just go for it. Or even like what I said about the VU light or a ice pack around my waist. Like that doesn't mean go out and get it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it just means just looking at it and understanding like the mechanism of action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just thinking about it. We don't have to be impulsive. And again, we are designed in our modern world to be impulsive and to buy.
Mm-hmm. And in your health journey, which are the daily routine that have worked the best for you and that you keep doing consistently?
Again, I think it's staples like grounding,
mm-hmm.
like light exposure. So sunlight exposure wherever I am in the morning, that like downloading what I would say, skin in a game, like walking around and not caring, like with respect, like not wearing clothes as much as possible. Obviously, like wearing shorts and such,
mm-hmm.
but skin in the game. And again, always going into nature and just spending time in nature, thinking, being alone, time to think. I think that's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I'm also interested with the flexibility. You talk a lot about flexibility. Why being flexible with our routine and habits is crucial if we want to thrive.
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, in our modern world, we have to take everything with a pinch of salt. There's no such thing as perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we have to be adaptable. So again, you might not find 100% grass-fed beef. You might not find wild salmon. But again, what you have to do is just understand you've got to make the best choice in a given scenario. So again, be a bit more flexible, or be flexible and healthy enough to avoid that in the first place and say, listen, I don't actually need to eat. That's probably the best choice going. I've got body fat and I know my brain's working and inflammation sort of dialed in. I know I can fast and there won't be any problem there with my glucose as a response. Or maybe it's like having the health at your disposal to flex it. And that could be like enjoying yourself at a party where you can socialize, where you can let your hair down, where you can dance the night away as an example. I think these are very important things. And again, part of that human experience of like connection with others, letting go, being a bit wild, and just not being like a snowflake as such and fragile and like needing to protect your health. Like the whole point of you prioritizing your health and putting energy there is about to flex it and do the things that you really enjoy. And obviously that doesn't mean like it's about eating like pancakes and Burger King and McDonald's and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. That's sort of like a modern invention of enjoying yourself. But again, like real essence of enjoying yourself, like with friends, dancing, again, with a pinch of like ancestral approach in there. And again, as your health sort of improves, your tolerance and your your interactions with others, and maybe your social group changes and evolves, or how you like to spend your time evolves as your health improves as well. Maybe you have that same thing where you maybe used to go out night clubbing on like a Friday night. Now for you, your peaceful Friday night is you just like, I don't know, watching a nature documentary, and then being able to wake up on Saturday morning and go to the park and read. Maybe that's like your change of perspectives now. So again, I think it's about being flexible and just being open-minded and not too like robotic.
And it seems that the easiest way to stay in optimal health is to move away from big cities, live in a place surrounded by nature, and to embrace an ancestral life approach that respects the different seasons. Many health influencers like you move to tropical areas for all those reasons. What's your take?
Of moving to a tropical area?
Yeah, and do you think is the only way to find optimal health? Because in the city it's more difficult to heal.
Yeah, I mean, so again, the reasons to live or move or even go on holiday to the sun is because it provides more stability to your circadian biology, and again allows you to be more efficient by using sunlight as well. So obviously in like the Northern Hemisphere right now, it's summertime. This is the best time of year in the Northern Hemisphere. So again, if you're stuck inside an office and indoors, this is a detriment to you at this time of year, even more so. But again, it's just giving you that sort of push start or jump start for your health to sort of kickstart again. It just makes it a bit easier when you come down into the tropics as such. But again, you could quite easily come down here and not go in the sun. You'll be like, oh, it's too hot, or I don't know, you still wear sun cream and sunglasses, or you go to a big holiday resort and you're just getting radiated and it's worse than living in a big city. So again, you've got all these sort of considerations to take in. Again, just because you're in the sun doesn't mean that you're making vitamin D.
But what about, for example, in my case, I was born in Switzerland and my climate is from here. What if I move to tropic? Maybe is something very different from my context.
Yeah. So yeah, again, it's a bit like you will adapt. So again, at the start, it's a stressor, and your body will adapt to it. You're changing all the cells of your body. You're stressing your mitochondria. And again, give it some time and your body will adapt and overcome this. And again, as a result of this, you'll get obviously more pigmentation. You'll get more melanin. And again, that's protecting you from the sun. You would, again, have so many things going on within your biology that over time you'd be basically able to adapt. Now, it's a bit more easier for you to do it than, say, someone from Africa who goes to a Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
That action is a bit worse for them. And again, our mitochondria are actually a bit different. Being from Northern European, right, from people from Africa, we have a different sort of mitochondrial way of utilizing energy. So again, you can actually offset that a bit better than the other spectrum or the other way around, which is often the case when people migrating. When people from the equator, the tropics, move back to the northern or move to the Northern Hemisphere. It's very hard.
And Ryan, do you have any particular message that you want to spread to our listeners before I let you go?
No, I mean, again, health and optimizing your health or biohacking is all about living your life on your terms and flexing it. So again, we can't get too neurotic about tracking with data. And we have to remember, like, life is just about an experience and about enjoying ourselves. And we shouldn't get too caught up in like the control element or the details as such. Again, a hippo or any other wild animal doesn't know or understand anything that I just said there, or the premise of evolution biology. They are literally just being and experiencing it and doing as instructed by the signals. So again, we don't need to make things complex. We just need to understand a few things and then just live in that sort of manner. And things will flow. And again, it's all about a flow or a coherent state within the body.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah, I had a blast. Thank you, Ryan, for your time, your passion, because I could feel also the passion in your voice, and it was really amazing to listen to your wisdom. I will leave all your contacts in the show note of this episode, and I thank you so much for being with us for this really important episode that breaks down a lot of dogmas and idea behind optimizing health. So thank you very much for your perspective and for your wisdom.
Thank you.